Hey everyone, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name's Matt Wakeling and this is the show that I produce in Sydney, Australia. Every weekend we drop deep dive interviews with leading guitarists and guitar figures. And midweek we have our iconic albums series, which you have tuned in for. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
All right, welcome to the iconic album show from the Guitar Speak podcast. I'm joined by my friends Rob Rhodes.
Hello.
And Gabor Josika.
Hello.
And we check out iconic records that have got some cool guitar stuff going on. Gabor is bringing tonight's record to you, or today, whenever you listen to this podcast.
Yes.
Over to you, Gabor.
All right, so my album that I chose, it may not be everyone's cup of tea, and some people may disagree with it being iconic, but I think it is iconic for the reasons that you shall find out in this next half an hour or so. It's St Vincent's self-titled album, St Vincent, often just referred to as self-titled. So it was. Little backstory. So St Vincent is basically Annie Clark, who's a guitarist, musician who's played in a bunch of different acts before as well. But she sort of around 2006 started doing her own thing and started using the name St Vincent. She took that name from a Nick Cave song, actually. And it's a song called, what is the song called? There She Goes, My Beautiful World. And in that song, Nick Cave sings about the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas dying in St Vincent's Hospital. And she loved that song and she took the name from that. So that's where the name St Vincent comes from.
Cool.
But it's her. She does everything. She writes all the songs and it sort of goes from there. So this was her fourth album. It was released on February 24th, 2014. And it was recorded at Elmwood Studios in Dallas. So she's originally from Texas, and so this was recorded in Dallas by, it was sort of her and producer, who was also producer and engineer for this album, John Congleton, who produced a bunch of her previous albums as well. But he's also worked with Erykah Badu and Modest Mouse, David Byrne, which is actually, we're going to talk about that actually, because there was a collaboration happening. He also worked with Goldfrapp, Marilyn Manson. He's had quite a bit of a resume. He's worked with quite a lot of bands. It was an album that won her the 2015 Grammy for Best Alternative Album, which she was only the second female ever to win that.
Oh, really?
After Sinead O'Connor.
Wow.
Sinead O'Connor was the first one. So she was, and she's since for each following album won multiple Grammys again. So that was sort of her. One of the reasons why I chose that album, that was sort of the album that kind of launched her to a certain degree.
Okay, yeah, cool.
So she released a bunch of albums before that. So it was the fourth album. She released Marry Me in 2007, Actor 2009, Strange Mercy in 2011. And then one of the albums, sort of on a side note that I want to talk about a little bit in this, is an album called Love This Giant, which is a collaboration she did with David Byrne from Talking Heads, who I absolutely love. I'm a massive Talking Heads. There will be a Talking Heads album in this series at some stage as well. Which I think, so that album had a lot to do with, that collaboration had a lot to do with, I think, where she's heading after that and into now. And then after that, she released Mass Seduction in 2017 and just recently Daddy's Home, which is actually a really, really good album as well. So my little backstory, just want to quickly, and then we'll get into it more, but my little backstory, I actually got into St. Vincent through her signature guitar.
Oh, yeah.
So in 2016, she released a signature guitar with Ernie Ball Music Man. And yeah, there you go. For the people with the special glasses, Rob is holding up a magazine with her on it. So she released her and Ernie Ball Music Man released this signature St. Vincent model. And I remember seeing it in guitar magazines and thinking, that's just the coolest looking guitar ever. Man. I don't know, is that a guitar that you guys are into?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's really cool. I think it's original. Looks like it looks like a cocktail dress, which is killer. Like, up the hips in the middle and up, and that's kind of got that vibe to it. I really like it.
It always reminded me, that there's that kind of logo that Madness have, which is almost like that. Is that suit thing? It's like a triangle thing. It almost reminds me a little bit of that. But yeah, so I saw the ad for that guitar in guitar magazines, and I thought, I gotta listen. Whoever, I've heard of St. Vincent before, and I was sort of aware that there was a St. Vincent, but I never really heard any of her music, and I thought, I've got to check out who has a guitar that looks like that. Cool. And actually, this album was the first album of hers I bought because it was the current album at the time, and I absolutely loved it, and I actually got into her whole back catalogue as well, and I personally think she's absolutely brilliant, and the stuff she does is pretty amazing. And if you listen to all the back catalogue as well, super varied in styles. So have you guys heard any of her stuff, like, other than this, or have you been familiar with her at all, or?
Probably similar to you. I think I'd heard a couple of songs, and I'd heard of her, and I'd checked out a few songs, but I'd never gone through a whole record.
Okay.
Obviously, the Music Man guitar thing made a splash in some of the stuff I was following online or whatever. Yeah, same thing. I thought it was just such a cool guitar. Yeah. I don't know if I could pull it off. But
I'm sure you could.
Maybe I could. But yeah, so the other thing I really liked about her, Rob just held up the Guitar World, her cover story, and I loved it that she wore a T-shirt with a bikini on the T-shirt, obviously having a big dig at Guitar World, who used to have like the bikini-clad models
on the front cover.
The
Buyer's Guide episodes. Yeah.
I know, man. Yeah. So when I saw her do that, number one, I thought she was awesome. And number two, I thought Guitar World was awesome for going along with it. Because I think they had dropped the bikinis models by then too. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, only 40 years too late, but still,
What's 40 years?
But I guess what I've found out about her since, she just seems like a really intriguing person. And I really enjoyed the record. I'm looking forward to the discussion as it unfolds, man.
Cool. So back to the album. Rob, sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm a forgettable guy, but that's all right.
No, never. On, sorry.
I'm also extremely self-deprecating, which I hope that's coming off.
You hope?
Yeah, I'm the same. I came across her through the guitar magazines. I've always been a bit of a Guitar World magazine subscriber. I think mostly because it's how I discovered a lot of artists. Yeah. I think I discovered Gary Clark Jr. through there. I discovered Tyler Bryant through there. And even like further back, I discovered so many acts through the little tune-up section where, new artist sections, and album review sections. So it's been a real part of just trying to stay connected to what's happening in America, basically, because we're a long way away. And so she came to the forefront because they were really championing her. Come on, brain. Sorry, that's the. No, I won't say that. So she was, the signature model was there, and she was on covers, and she had cover stories and little smaller stories within there, and her albums are being reviewed. So she was always sort of, I would jump on YouTube and watch some clips or watch live and try and maybe, broaden my horizons a little bit of what that alternative kind of scene that she was building was about. Because I just like to keep up with what's going on. But it was really, for me, it was difficult because I think I wrote some notes here that I'm a sucker for a big pop song, a hook, just something that grabs me, a big vocal, especially when it comes to female vocalists. Like, so many great female vocalists out there, and it just never grabbed me. And I understand that it's all part of that avant-garde movement, and she's doing some amazing things. And I've really loved the Daddy's Home stuff. I've really gotten into that. I think
that's a really good
that
album,
speaks to me more because there's hooks, there's a bit of a pop sensibility, there's the call and response conversation vocals, which is very like Young Americans Bowie thing going on there. That grabbed me. And as an artist, as a person, as a musician, she is like absolutely like wonderful. She's a great speaker. She's done a couple of long interviews lately on some of the YouTube channels, and she's absolutely intriguing. And I think there's
funny actually,
something big coming for her. And it's a shame that album came out during lockdown, but maybe it's been beneficial for her.
I think it works well because she did a lot of kind of live streaming stuff and video stuff, and because it's this whole kind of 70s vibe, even down to the way the video looks, like she has a different aspect ratio, and it all kind of looks like old VHS tapes and stuff like that. She kind of really works with, this is with the newest album, she really kind of works that in. It's actually funny you saying, the hooks and stuff with the latest album, because this album's the self-titled album and the following album, Mass Seduction, and this is to me also kind of almost funny that the signature guitar came out, because they were and she went through a very anti-guitar phase. Where there's a lot of electronic music. Self-titled still has a lot of guitar on it, and everything has guitar on it. But Mass Seduction especially, very, very electronic and very minimalist. And it's funny, so she got the signature guitar and she kind of went away from guitar, really. But with this album now, she wanted to do the latest one, Daddy's Home, she wanted to do this sort of Steely Dan-like kind of 70s kind of everyone in the room kind of party vibe album, and I think she pulled it off really well. But I mean, this is a different album. We're not talking about that album.
I want to check it out though, because I've read about it and the story.
It's great.
It's
really good.
Yeah, I'll dig in.
It's really
I'm glad
good.
you guys have been talking it up.
Actually, another album I think everyone, if you haven't listened to it, everyone should check out is Love This Giant. And to me, I'm going to start sort of with Love This Giant, because I think her collaboration with David Byrne, if you listen to all her previous stuff, and then you listen to Love This Giant, and then you kind of, and especially if you watch some of the live stuff they did together, and then you look at her after that, you can sort of see, I think he had quite a big influence on her. And so if you don't know about Love This Giant, so it's her and David Byrne did a collaboration. So I think they met at some benefit concert and kind of hit it off and decided to make an album together. But again, it's a sort of anti-guitar thing that she went through at the time. So it's an album where both her and David Byrne sing, and they share the writing. And David Byrne plays some acoustic guitar on some tracks. She plays some electric guitar on some tracks. Then there's programmed drums, and the rest is a brass band.
Oh, wow.
So it's a full brass band. But it's such clever songs and the way they're written. So it's basically brass bands with some electronic drums, a little bit of guitar, and singing over it. So if you get a chance, check it out. They released a single, I think it was called Who? Great clip too, and typical David Byrne kind of style as well. And especially if you watch the live concerts, they're all kind of dressed in same color outfits. And they have these kind of dance routines and choreography with the brass band. Like, I think it was an 8 or 11-piece brass band that they toured with. live drummer, keyboard player, them two, and a brass band. It was fantastic. Definitely, if you get a chance, check it out. It's so different but so cool.
Well, she does different, like her live shows, like crazy costume things and, space themes. And then she has like those weird masks that the band members wear.
The faceless thing. Because one of the things she started doing, and I think that's one of the reasons why this album is a self-titled album, being her fourth album. I think... and from what I gathered from interviews around the time when they were doing a collaboration, I think a lot of David Byrne rubbed off on her. And after that, she kind of went into this becoming a character and David Bowie-esque, where you become a character and then you write songs around a character. And I think she started with this, and it was the character that she created on stage, St Vincent. So this album is this album about her character, kind of, that she is on stage. Cool. And then she did the next album was sort of more about sort of this kind of fake Hollywood thing, in which that's why you have all these faceless, masks and all this sort of stuff, and almost like doll looking out. They all kind of look like dolls. It's a sort of, I think it's commentary on the. Because after the self-titled album and winning a Grammy and sort of becoming more of an A-lister, she kind of became part of that world. And then her next album became this sort of talking about the fakeness of Hollywood, and songs like Pills and stuff like that. And then, now she went into this next character, which is a washed up 70s kind of superstar actress kind of thing. So I think, and that's one of the reasons also why I chose this self-titled album. I think it sort of started her, in a way, like I talked about in the Synchronicity album. I thought that was the album where Sting sort of became Sting as a songwriter. Mm-hmm. To me, this is where she sort of became who she is now, and it's sort of everything she's done since sort of started then. Because if you listen to a lot of the stuff before, it's great, but it's very different, very, very different. And it's sort of, this album kind of changed. And I think it's all down to David Byrne. So check out that album, people out there, if you can. Love This Giant. It's a really, really cool album, especially if you're into Talking Heads and David Byrne.
Yeah, cool.
That was the sort of, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a kind of backstory. So this album also very different to a lot of albums when it came to the recording side of things. Most of the previous albums that she recorded, and a lot of the stuff was written in the studio, and it was kind of thrown together fairly quickly, jam sessions and stuff like that. And she worked with the same producer, what was his name again? John Congleton. She worked with him quite a bit before, so they knew each other quite well. But this album, she wrote most of it during the process of working with David Byrne. And there's actually a quote, one of the reasons why it sort of became very electronic. I read an interview somewhere that she lived in an apartment, I think in Austin, in Texas. And one of her neighbors was always complaining about her making too much noise when she played guitars. So she started just sitting and using GarageBand on a Mac and just drawing stuff in MIDI, and even guitar parts, doing MIDI guitar parts. To be quiet and just sit there but still write stuff. So a lot of this stuff was written, and that's why it sort of had that electronic vibe to it as well. It was all written by her just sitting in front of GarageBand and just writing it on that. She also, this is sort of a quote from her from an interview, she said, "This is a more primary color record than I've done in the past. It's generally a bit brighter. It was less emotionally fraught than when I was writing Strange Mercy, her previous album. There's an exuberance in Love This Giant, and maybe some of that carried into this record. It's entertainment, it's fun." That was sort of one of, just a quote. I thought that would be kind of interesting. So the recording took place over about 6 months, on and off. They kind of got together quite a bit. And there's actually a really good interview with John Congleton, the producer, about the recording session and using very unorthodox ways of recording. So a lot of the drums, for example, were just one mic in the room. And often he said you'd hear, and he said if you listen to it, you can hear it goes from one, one day they recorded the bits to a song with one drummer, with one drum kit in one room, and then a different drummer came in and played a different drum kit, and it was mic'd up completely differently. And sort of mid-song, it just shifts from one to the other.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And they were trying to do things trying to do things very differently to how they used to work together before. And then there's gear. I don't know if we want to get into gear now, or do we want to take a break and then get into gear? Or?
Yeah, let's take a break and we'll talk gear. And maybe some songs as well.
Sounds good.
Cool. We'll be back with more St Vincent's self-titled album, which was called St Vincent. This episode is brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott, ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and the McNally Smith College of Music. I was one of the beta testers for the course and can say as a music educator, I was really impressed by the logical sequence of learning. The course has also been endorsed by players such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch. For more details, check out the links in our show notes. Okay, welcome back. We're talking about St Vincent's self-titled album from 2015. Gabor has brought it to us. Back to you, Gabor.
That's me. Okay, so briefly, let's talk a little bit about gear, and then let's get into some songs.
Yeah.
So she was really known before, or not known, but I mean, before that, if people knew her, she was known for using kind of old harmony-style guitars. So silhouette bobcats, that kind of offset shape, like a Jazzmaster shape, but cool. The old kind of with the gold foil pickups in it. But just around that time of that album, she started working with Ernie Ball Music Man, and she originally started using a lot of Albert Lee guitars, the dual humbucker Albert Lee guitars. And most live shows you see from that era, she used a white one and a black one. And she seemed to really like playing these, and that's sort of how the whole collaboration came together. But in the studio, she was using John Congleton's guitar, one of his favorite guitars that he had lying around in the studio, which was a Thurston Moore Jazzmaster.
Wow.
So most of the songs, so his signature, that kind of green kind of signature Jazzmaster.
That's cool.
I think it just had a volume knob, and that's it.
It's very PJ Harvey.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It would have had some drumsticks jammed in the strings too at some stage, surely.
I'd imagine so.
I don't know if they came with the Fender model when you bought it, though, or if you had to bring your own.
That'd be weird. Open up the case and there's a, what?
What? Drumstick? So yeah, that's on most of the album. She also used, and she seemed to be using that live a lot as well, so it must be something about the guitar, but the song Birth in Reverse, she uses a 1979 Hackstrom Super Swede. And it's in a film clip, and live often from that era, she seems to play that guitar for whatever reason. It must have a certain vibe to it that seems to really work for that particular song. She seems to, most songs she tunes, and still I think up until now, she tunes down to D standard.
Okay.
So a whole step down, a whole tone down, because apparently she said, I've read a few interviews, it suits her voice better that way. And she seems to use capos a lot. I don't know if you ever see live footage of her, there's always a capo on the headstock, and she seems to use capos a lot for songs. Okay. Which kind of makes you wonder why she tunes to D standard. But anyway. And for this album also, she started using a lot of alternate tunings. And she liked this thing where she would put multiple strings to the same note, but ever so slightly off to get that kind of beating, kind of natural chorusing sound. Wow. She seemed to really like that. So that's a thing she used a lot on this album.
So that's a Sonic Youth thing right there.
That's a very Sonic Youth thing, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'd imagine there'd be influences on there.
Yeah, sure.
So that's guitar-wise. And actually she... according again to that John Congleton, a lot of the album was recorded just going direct into the console. So using distortion of fuzz pedals and then going straight into the console, into a Neve console that they used. Because she loves, and again, there's a really interesting video. I think it's two parts that she did with Eventide. And there's a guy from Eventide there, and he goes through some of the old Eventide Factor pedals, the kind of
Mod
four-button
factor,
kinda, the
time
space
factor,
and mod
space,
factor,
yeah.
pitch factor, yeah. And they kind of go through her with that, with some sounds, with a new pedal board that was made for the previous album, for the Strange Mercy album. And she finds all these kind of weird fuzz sounds that are in reverb sounds kind of built into these things. And she constantly talks about how she loves the more disgusting the sound, the better. She loves really dirty, disgusting, fuzzy kind of sounds. So a lot of the album apparently was recorded just going directly into the console with fuzz pedals. But she also used a couple of old Dan Electra and Kalamazoo amps that were lying around as well. Sort of small
battery-powered things?
low wattage 60s kind of tube amps.
Okay.
Yeah. Just for that kind of destroyed sound when you crank them, completely crank them.
Yeah.
But live for the tour, she actually started using Kemper profilers because her guitar tech apparently also worked with Nine Inch Nails, and Nine Inch Nails just started using, prior to him joining her, started using Kempers, and she kind of went, oh, well, if it's good enough for Trent, it's good enough for me. So she started using them. And also for live, she stopped using pedal boards because, and again, so this is going back to the David Byrne thing. She started using a lot of choreography on stage for the live shows after this. And she was always worried about stepping on the wrong pedals and stuff. So the whole show actually ended up being run by the keyboard player who had Ableton there. And in Ableton, you can send MIDI messages. And she used an RJM, what are they called?
Mastermind?
The Mastermind and a Gizmo, effects Gizmo. So she had like a rack drawer with all the effects in it. And she actually played, and they weren't playing along to... there's also actually a very interesting interview with a keyboard player in some tech magazine. And they weren't playing along to tracks. There were no tracks. But they were playing along to clicks because the clicks would change his keyboard sounds, the clicks would change the other keyboard player's sounds, the click would change the electronic drum sounds, and her guitar and Annie's guitar sound. So everything was changed. No one had to push any buttons because there was so much going on apparently that you ran out of time pushing buttons.
Wow.
So Ableton ran all of it by sending MIDI information to everything.
I love that because like so many bands run tracks. To subvert that idea, you want to pull all the crazy sounds, so you run MIDI, but the MIDI's, it's just switching sounds for you.
And so apparently
That's
the keyboard player
cool.
had foot pedals, and with the foot pedals, he would go from one bit to the next, so they could stretch bits. So it would be like a verse bit, but if they wanted to play the verse bit longer, he could, keep it looping.
Yeah.
And then if they wanted to go to the next bit, you push the button and it would go to the next bit.
That's really cool.
Whichever way it works. So, but apparently never any tracks. It's all played live. Effects-wise, very quickly, and then we get into songs, she got, during that album, and I think previous album as well, she really got into the Big Sonics X Pandora, the little silver round thing.
Oh, the round one, yeah.
That Billy Gibbons
Billy
played.
Gibbons.
For all your viewers out there.
Gabor has got one.
I have one. I have two.
It looks like a
love the
silver
X-Pandora.
medal, folks.
Yeah, it's like a hockey puck.
Hockey puck,
It's like a silver hockey puck, but really dodgily built, like old electroharmonic stuff that kind of bends as you push on it.
Okay.
But it sounds killer. The Zvex Mastotron, which is sort of the kind
The
of
fuzz.
Crazy
thing.
fuzz.
blue fuzz.
Yeah.
Boss PS5 pitch shifter, and she started using two Eventide H9s for this sort of little H9, the little white.
Yeah.
Hang on, again for you people with this thing.
Rock and roll,
H9.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she used for the solo in Rattlesnake, she used an EHX microsynth.
Oh, yeah,
So
that
that's
stuck
effect.
out big time.
Yeah. That's and she really likes playing a lot of the synth parts on guitar or making the guitar sound like it's a synth.
Yeah.
Or in those days, she really liked that. So that's basically the recording and gear and stuff. Now let's talk songs. So let's start with Rob. Standout tracks.
Look, I really struggled to have a favorite song. Again, I was kind of looking for something that as a whole like grabbed me, and it was mostly moments in songs.
Okay.
So I really liked Birth in Reverse, and I particularly liked the little riff that at the end of the chorus that goes into the second verse. There's like this little funky, yeah. Like I really like that. And Huey Newton is obviously, it's a more guitar orientated song, so I was drawn to that. But the thing for me is I could hear all the influences, what I thought the influences were anyway, from my perspective. So that record, I could hear a lot of Bowie and Tin Machine. I could hear Kate Bush. I could hear Devo. Like, to me, like, there's very, like, she must have been into Devo, but there's also Muse and Prince and Portishead. Like, I couldn't find that she referenced Portishead anywhere, but there seems to be that kind of feel, which is a Eurythmics thing as well. There's a bit of that in there. But also Regret. I did like Regret. It stood out to me as probably my favourite song on that record because it blended elements of Prince and Queen. Like I could hear that kind of thing going on, and more like the Prince of the later years. So the Raven to the Joy and those sorts of records when, you know, it sort of sat more with what she's doing. There was that a lot of very similar thing where Prince plugged his dirt pedal straight into the console to get a lot of those guitar sounds, and you can hear immediately that that's what's happening.
I like that. It's that kind of harmony guitar, that riff, and then each time through an extra bit gets added, and an extra bit and it just gets massive and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, so that kind of
Regret,
that sort of identified the Brian May thing to me, where it was that layered harmony. But yeah, that kind of stands out to me, and she is a big Gilmour and Nick Cave fan. She tends to mention them a lot in interviews, and you can hear those influences too. And to go back on something you said, she intentionally, in one interview I read, said she does everything she can to make the guitar sound as least like a guitar as possible. So it's weird that you've got this poster child, like guitar magazine thing, because she's not really that poster girl either. So it's really good to see the development of the guitar world, that she's on a magazine cover. She's not an Orianthe. She's not a Jennifer Batten. She's not.
No, she's not a full shredder.
No. She is this. What you said. She's got a concept. She's a character. And it's really good to see that. Even though she came out of Berkeley and these places, she's really focused on who she wants to be as an artist. And I think that's the thing that draws you into her, draws me into her as an artist more so than the music does. So, and that just made me want to like her, and why I've sort of gravitated to the Daddy's Home record, because it has that pop sensibility that I talked about earlier. So, but it's good to see, you know, that I have followed her career and seen the development and seen the changes, and just be able to appreciate that an artist these days like that has been able to develop and is also being able to enter the mainstream.
Which is you don't see much of that kind of stuff, and that's one of the things that really, to me, she kind of gives me almost a little bit of hope. You know, that you can still be, there's people like her, and I mean, he's been around for longer, but Trent Reznor, you know, it's people like that who do stuff that's out of the norm, that's kind of, you know, weird and wacky harmonies that shouldn't be working and stuff like that. But yet it's in the mainstream, and they win Grammys and they win Academy Awards in Trent Reznor's case. And people love them, and the media loves them, even though they're not, and they're poster boys and girls. Even though they don't fit into the poster boys and girls thing, and I love that. That's one of the things I really like about her.
Absolutely.
Matt, what about you? Favorite songs?
Yeah, I mean, I just +1 on that whole idea of subverting the idea of what the guitar is, and still making it super important, but not super obvious. So I guess,
Yeah.
last week with the No Doubt record, I was talking about the idea of a lot of those 90 records having great parts and great tones, but it wasn't wall-to-wall shredding. This is like, I don't know if it's that idea times a million or something on this record. It's so hard to hear it. It was really hard to find a conventional guitar tone on the whole album.
There isn't any, no.
Which was exciting because you can work out it is still being guitar driven. It's just another manipulation of the instrument, which I found really exciting. So when you're talking about plugging into the board, that sort of explained why. I guess Birth in Reverse has got really hi-fi kind of fuzz going on. So when you said that, I thought, okay, that's why I'm hearing that tone and kind of.
I think that song is that the Expandora straight into the console.
Okay, yeah, which is really cool because it sounds super processed, but it's just like a 3-knob stop box into when you just plug it straight in. You're just getting all that full range gnarliness that we've spent 7 years trying to avoid by building guitar amps.
We might all be headed there. We might all be headed there with the shortage of tubes at the moment.
Yeah. So man, Rattlesnake I really dug the solo-y, or the in inverted commas solo in that. There was the I think that was the microsynth.
That was the microsynth, in Rattlesnake.
Yeah, that's a cool vibe. In the midst of all this cool sonic mayhem, at the end of the day, I'm still hearing really melodic tunes. And a real sense of melody in what she's doing, which is always great to hear. I am really intrigued to hear it in more of a pop direction with the Daddy's Home record, which I haven't heard yet, but just hearing you guys describe that's really piqued my interest. So I mean, she writes cool riffs as well, like the Huey Newton. Those riffs are gigantic.
Yeah.
So
that's a funny song as well. It starts off with this kind of almost angelic kind of thing, and then it goes into this monster fuzz, over the top fuzz kind of riff thing.
Yeah.
It's cool how that sort of diversity changes sort of.
Yeah. So found her really intriguing. Really interesting musician, and
she's got an interesting playing style as well. She tends to play more with her fingers. She does play with a pick as well, but a lot with her fingers. And she talks about, I think she's a niece of this guy Tuck Andrus. I've never really heard of him before.
Oh, you just took my fun fact.
Wow. Damn it. Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry,
I'm amazed
Rob.
either way,
Fun
fellas.
fact.
That's awesome. I had no idea.
We're all contributing.
So she's the niece of, and she toured with him when she was really little, and sort of was around. And I mean, I haven't really heard much of him, but he's apparently like quite a renowned fingerstyle player.
Yeah, his claim to fame were the Hot Licks videos in the 80s, 90s. He had he did a series of those. Yeah, so you had Paul Gilbert and Lukather, and and Tuck did them. Yeah, that was sort of his. That's where I came across him anyway back in the day in the Guitar Magazine ads for Hot Licks.
He did that.
Yeah,
he was
videos.
like, because he's in a duo with his wife Tuck and Paddy.
Yeah.
And they'd be busting out Hendrix or Stevie Wonder tunes, and he'd be playing every part at once.
Okay, wow.
Like
okay,
the horns, the guitars. He's phenomenal.
Yeah. So she sort of grew up around him a lot, and I think learned a lot of her guitar playing from him, and she still to this day uses her fingers a lot, and that's because of it came from that. Cool. So she has sort of a more unorthodox style, and she uses she plays slide a lot, not because she necessarily likes the slide, but she likes. It kind of makes her go out of her comfort zone, and instead of going for notes that she knows will work, she kind of listens to the notes and finds notes that seem to work. Whether they're in tune or not is a different story, or perfectly in tune. But so she uses a slide a lot as well. But yeah, for me, the whole album is great. I seem to be quite drawn towards Digital Witness is a song I really like, and that was sort of one of the first songs I kind of heard and really liked of hers. And that it reminds me a lot of that Love This Giant album, because it's all that sort of synth horn parts, basically, again, that kind of make it all up. So I think that's maybe that was partially written for the other album and didn't make it on the other album. But yeah, interesting production. There's also another little in Rattlesnake. They didn't quite know. They recorded the vocals and weren't quite sure. It didn't sound quite right, and apparently she, in those days, still felt very self-conscious about her voice because she considers herself more of a guitar player than a singer, even though I think she's got a great voice. But so what they did was she was in the console room with an SM57, and everything was blaring loud, and she was kind of yelling into it and sort of cupping the mic, and the distortion came from that. So
Cool.
And it sort of worked, and it was funny. The sound, the quote was, "It sounded really shit, but was perfect for the song."
Sometimes
I
it's
just
just
love
those things, they're perfect.
Yeah. And generally, just her playing, I like her approach to things and the way she does things. And I mean, I was sort of, I chose this album, like I said, because I think it sort of started her journey to where she is now. But if people out there generally get a chance, her whole back catalogue is really, really good. Her first two albums, there's a lot of almost sort of folky, a little bit of cabaret, jazz kind of influences. There's horn, there's violins on her early albums. Then once she with Strange Mercy, it kind of went a little bit more electronic. And then with this, she went a lot more electronic. And then Mass Seduction, very, very electronic. And now with Daddy's Home, she's gone back to sort of the more... I think the recording, a lot of it was everyone was in a room and it was recorded live.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting how she goes about things. And like I said, she's one of the, in my opinion, very few mainstream successfully artists at the moment who sort of give me hope that there is maybe, it's not just this kind of, let's just make
garbage.
Everything sound exactly the same, totally. And it's sort of formula music production that's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
And she's just been a part of that Sad But True thing, and she did a cover of that song, the Metallica song.
Yeah, which is cool too, which is really, really cool.
It's very different.
I think
cool.
Weezer did. We talked about Weezer much earlier, like weeks ago now, but I think Weezer did. It's a cool album. So it's all covers of Metallica songs by different artists.
I wanted to go back to that whole MIDI switching thing. So because I've been these new lights that I've got and a foot pedal that can go out of my MIDI switcher, and I can send MIDI messages to like every time I hit a guitar solo to go into like full strobe mode.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
it's what we've always wanted.
The technology today that you can program your MIDI switcher to send MIDI messages to the lighting, and every time you change a channel or turn on an effect, it changes. So you can do the whole pedal color thing. So whenever you hit the chorus, blue light. The JHS video that Josh did with what color you associate what effect with.
Yeah.
So whenever you hit a phase 90, like it goes to orange. Every time you hit distortion, yellow.
You should sync it with the HX Stomp, so it's the same colors as the effect.
As the buttons.
The effects colors that you.
I've been getting into changing the colors on the foot switches too.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because you can go right in now through Command Center and change all the lights on the HX Stomp to go, okay, well, I want the chorus to be a blue and I want the flanger to be, purple or whatever.
Yeah.
And that way there's that, like, oral cue as well and things. But, yeah, that whole MIDI switching thing, it reminded me of that's what I'm in the middle of doing right now.
It's cool. It's modern technology. The only problem is when it doesn't work, then it's a disaster. But
you just have a backup. You just have a backup,
Okay.
Green. So you don't know if it's a tube screamer or a phaser, a Boss phaser.
All right, there you go. St Vincent's self-titled album from 2015. Cool record, Gabor. A fascinating artist, and definitely worthy of the iconic status, man.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, I was a bit kind of, will people think this is iconic or not? But I think it definitely is. And also having, like Rob was saying, it's a female artist who is sort of becoming, an iconic female artist. So for that reason as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good decision.
Yeah, man, I love the breadth of artists between the three of us that we're bringing to this. I think it's cool. I mean, we could just focus on Led Zeppelin-esque stuff, and we'd come up with great shows. But
skin it, man, skin it.
Exactly.
Freebird,
man. Simplify, man.
Exactly. Okay, you get the idea. We all get the idea.
Yeah.
Rob, where can people keep up with all your business, man?
Yeah, my main gig is Living in the 70s. So just jump on Facebook, Living in the 70s Live, and you can laugh at all our silly antics.
Nice. Rob, and you are one of the hardest working men in showbiz, like legit.
Well,
you do
I was, but
yeah, you were.
people keep screwing. COVID keeps screwing with me.
You need a cape. You need a cape that you don't throw.
I'm crazy, man. This band is a full-time gig, and I'm so happy for it. And we have amazing support. So even in this lockdown, which I'm not sure when this one will go to air. Hopefully, we'll be out of it by then.
Yeah.
But even in this lockdown period, people have been buying up our cruise tickets, and they'll end up with basically 3 sold-out cruises since the lockdown. So I'm super lucky, and I thank everybody for their continued support.
Yeah, great, man. That's awesome. And Gabor.
Yes. Well, if you want to, for example, watch a video on the Big Sonics X Pandora pedal, then jump onto YouTube.
Come on.
And check out the Super Fun Awesome Happy Time pedal show. And a couple of years ago, we did a video on both the version 1 and version 2. So,
Nice.
you can check that out there. So Super Fun Awesome Happy Time pedal show. All one word. We don't do gaps.
Yeah.
It's all in one breath. And yeah, that's it.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, fellas, for another iconic album. And I'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Gabor.
Thanks, Rob and Matt. See you guys later.
All right, thanks for joining us for another Guitar Speak podcast, Iconic Albums. I've really enjoyed putting these conversations together with Rob and Gabor, and it's been a really cool addition to our podcast show, which every week has deep dive one-on-one interviews as well. That's been our bread and butter for the last 5 years, and that will be continuing as well. Thanks to Fretboard Biology for sponsoring today's episode. Check out the links in the show notes. All right, my name's Matt Wakeling. You've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. And in the words of Michael Schenker, German guitarist from UFO, the Scorpions, and MSG,
keep rocking, keep on rocking.
Keep on rocking indeed. I'll catch you next time. Bye now.